Hey, what's up? This is Fear Dragon, and I am here with the one and only JonSnow George. It's like three first names. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good.
All right, so we are here on day 2 of Dreamhack Austin. The round of 8 is underway, and you had a crazy awesome run throughout the bracket.
I did. I did, and then it ended, and then I was sad, but it's a fun journey.
Yeah, you're my only dark horse prediction to come true this event. But I might have also cursed you, because then I was like, I limited you. I put you up against Nurchio, basically, by predicting you round of 16.
Did you predict me around a 16 or around?
I predicted you round of 16, but I didn't have the Twitter characters be like round of 16 plus.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm sorry about that, man.
It's all right.
So how do you feel like you did?
Pretty good. I didn't expect to get out of groups, to be honest. There's a lot of hard groups, and I felt like I needed to get lucky, and I don't even think I got lucky. I think I got a pretty decent group, and I still got out.
Yeah, it was a lot of really weird groups. I think a lot of people were saying like there were some really easy groups and there were some really hard groups that were going on. Really want to actually know like how you thought other people were doing. Also, like any kind of like big sleepers that you thought people who were really good that didn't quite have as good of a showing, or opposite direction, like people you didn't actually think that were that good, but like really impressed a lot of people.
I didn't expect Noni to make it out of groups. That's a pretty big upset. Even though like he was really good, you never really know how much they're playing. I think Optimus is really good, and he just he got pretty exhausted having to go all the way through groups and then getting a pretty difficult group.
I heard you did some really mean stuff to him in terms of those games.
Yeah, I cheesed him out. I kind of just metagamed him completely and just didn't really want to play long macro games versus him because he's a very solid player.
Railgun build?
Railgun build, yeah.
Penguin tell you to do it?
Yeah, he did. And I looked it up the night before. It looked all right. I don't think I did it properly, but I don't think it mattered just because of his opener and everything.
Yeah, that's fair. So just in terms of like, I think recently you've had some crazy good results. Obviously the round of 8 finish, or is it Psystorm that's helping you out? I mean, you also won Cheesadelphia not that long ago, the most recent one. What sort of changed for you?
I don't know. I think it's just generally been sometimes you have to wait for these opportunities to come and, the brackets to go your way. Because, I don't know, if I've been pretty relaxed and just pretty not nervous in these tournaments. I think that's a big secret. Because often, back when I'm not even practicing as much as I used to. I used to put a lot of work in. I feel like you get way too nervous when you've, invested a lot. And then it comes to the point in the tournament and you're like, if I don't win, I'm going to be really disappointed.
Yeah.
But kind of when you take it a little easier on yourself, I think you leave more opportunity to do well.
It's the whole ironic factor of like the less if you practice too much, you end up hurting yourself. But if you kind of like get that nice little safe zone, end up doing really well.
I've also you just gotten better at knowing how to practice and just the meta, and you learn a lot of different player styles.
Yeah, just like experience, you think?
Yeah, I think I've become a lot better tournament player over the years.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like you say, sometimes you just wait for the lucky rack and everything, but I feel like you actually had some like pretty good players that you came up against and beat. I think back to like Cheesadelphia and everything, but like the whole game, the series versus Masa, like really sticks out to me as just like, okay, dude, are you sure? Like I know you made it to the finals and you had to beat a lot of the really good players. It's not like someone just kind of like cheesed out some of the best in other side and you got lucky or something. It's not like, oh man, well Printf beat Masa and then you beat Printf in the finals, right?
I mean, yeah, the Masa series at Cheesadelphia, I definitely kind of had to work for that win. I also just think my ZVT had just gotten to a point where I was really good at that time. So I guess it was a hard opponent, but it just kind of fell into place that my matchup was really good at that time.
Cool. So I think a lot of people may at least be somewhat familiar with this, especially since you're playing the Collegiate Star League, but you are a full-time student, correct?
Yep. I am full-time studying computer science at RPI. So yeah, that can cut into your practice time sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Computer science, not always an easy major, but yeah, how is that going? When are you graduating?
It's going good. I'm graduating in 2019 May.
Okay, so you got a few years left.
Yeah. Right now I could graduate a semester early, but I might take a co-op or something, so who knows exactly when I'll graduate.
Yeah. Have you put any thought into like going the whole full-time route if things go really, really well? I don't know if you win the next Dreamhack Montreal or something.
I've always thought about it. Maybe like taking a semester off or a summer. it's always a thought, but you never know. Again, you're putting more pressure on you. You know, if I already am doing all right, in school, maybe going full time. If I do like the same, you'd feel kind of bad about that.
Yeah, that would definitely make sense. And it's like a bridge that you can cross when it comes up. Makes sense. How do you sort of feel about how the North American scene is shaping up these days? Because, people have always looked down a little bit on the North American scenes, and it's like, oh, the weakest region. I mean, technically right now, you could argue that there are 3 Latin American players and only 1 American player right now in the round of 8. Latin America is doing pretty well.
Latin America is really interesting because it's like they have 3 extremely strong players. And then it's a really big gap, I think.
And then there's B-Lord, like.
And there's B-Lord and Jim Rising who are good, but they're just, it's a completely different level, which is pretty crazy. I think, the NA scene is kind of weird because we have a lot of good players, but it's just a weird situation where, Scarlett's playing her off race in WCS, and she's just focusing only on GSL. She might not really want to come to these North American events as much when she's in Korea. But I think, when North America is at its full strength and we have, True playing really well, Neeb playing really well, Masa, Scarlett, Puck, Pilly, and I, it is pretty strong, but it definitely, there's a lot of really competitive players out right now, especially in Europe. It's extremely competitive. Cyril, Showtime, Nurtrio, Snoot, these guys are amazing. And it's kind of hard for the NA scene to keep up, I think. Last year we were, with Neeb, coming up, rising, I think there's a lot of hope for the NA scene. Especially when we have more Koreans, I think we're a very strong scene.
I feel like, if anything, Dreamhack Austin sort of shown that there are, well, it's not necessarily every North American or like the average North American can compete with Europe. It seems like there's definitely like this kind of top standing of North American players who can compete with a lot of the best. I mean, even taking a look at like Game Time beating Euthermal and stuff. Granted, Euthermal, I think, not feeling great against Zerk today and this event, but I think even you like having some really good results. Like I really feel like, if anything, it's sort of been shown that there are like those top NA players. Do you feel like there's like a lot of opportunities for like events and everything? Do you feel like you're not really too concerned about like, oh man, are there going to be enough things happening right now? Because as far as right now, like WCS events, it's basically just Austin and Montreal.
Yeah. The NA events, you have Austin, Montreal. Then you have Cheesadelphia's every once in a while. So yeah, there's not too many events, but it's also kind of the issue if you're trying to play part-time, while in school. You don't really want too many events. I know like Stefano had that issue where he was flying every other week, so he couldn't it wasn't even feasible for him to be in college or anything. Yeah. So it's a good balance. I think having these 4 WCS events is good. At least the regional challengers. Obviously going to Europe is pretty difficult for most NA players, but it seems like there's a pretty big gap in events. Like there's nothing between, October, September, all the way to, I don't know, March.
Yeah, it's basically just, I guess, like in November you have BlizzCon, so that kind of makes sense. But I think, I agree. After that, it's kind of like a big open gap.
Yeah, and there are like WESG and BlizzCon. But those are kind of like for the best of the best, not really a big competition like WCS events. And it's kind of crazy that there's 4 WCS events between April and September. At the beginning of September.
Yeah, it's like all of the WCS events are right between there, for foreigners at least. Yeah.
Foreigners. So I think it's pretty competitive for that little stretch, but for the rest of the year, it can be pretty spacious.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. So kind of shifting back to you for a moment, kind of final thing that I want to bring up before we go to shout-outs and everything, because I know that I'm sure there's other games and stuff you want to go watch and see how things are going. But one of the things that I really love about your playstyle, besides being the low drone king and loving to get a little bit aggressive, that's always fun, but I feel like you've always been one of the most consistent players. And it's kind of funny because I feel like in previous years, one of the things that held you back the most is that you wouldn't always get like the really high highs, you wouldn't get crazy big upset results, but you'd never really have like it never felt like you had really bad days. And I think other players will like tell me that. I was like, yeah, JonSnow, the problem is he doesn't have bad days. Like you always got to be afraid of this guy. He's always going to like meet that minimum bear requirement, but you also didn't have a huge upsets. And I almost feel like now it's kind of working more toward your favor because you might not still have those like big high finishes, but now you're actually that good that like your medium level is good enough to start taking games off really good players. Do you feel like that's a good description?
I feel like sometimes I do have lows, but you don't really see them. They're just normally like on the ladder or just have sometimes. Then I'll take a nap and I'll feel better. But yeah, I definitely feel more consistent now. Especially I don't know if it's just the meta, my practice. I used to always just feel like I'd lose to Protoss's randomly. Now my ZP is pretty good, and there's a lot of Protoss's in the foreign scenes. I think that's been a big help to just get my medium level up there.
Maybe I need to set up another best of 69 versus Peely next time you feel down.
That's a lot of games. that did help, I think, a lot in practice versus all-ins, although all-ins aren't really popular right now.
Yeah. Although those are also on like 4v4 maps and stuff. You did a lot of Ling drafts.
Yeah, I mean, at least now we'd have more legacy maps to play on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what do you feel like is your secret to consistency?
I think like when you're playing against like a good player or someone that might be around your level, I think people always try to take these weird risks where you're like, all right, I gotta cheese them. Next game I gotta be super greedy, and the next game I gotta do this. I think just play your game, do what you did in practice. I think that's just kind of like the secret. That's what Diego said he did versus Snoot. He was just like, I just made sure that I was playing exactly what I was doing on ladder every single game, which is the secret. Because you always psych yourself out and you're like, all right, I got to do this thing I never did before, or be super greedy, super all in. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like you kind of fool yourself into thinking that you're unprepared when you've been preparing something all along. It's like nothing has actually changed. All the stuff that you've been preparing is still very, very good and feasible, and you're probably going to do it better than anything you try and do on the fly.
Yeah, I felt like that versus like Hearthstone. I kind of went with that mentality. I did what I was going to do. And then versus Nurchio, that all went out the window, and I felt so unprepared, and I was like, all right, I got to cheese him, I got to be greedy, I got to do all these mind games, and it did not work at all.
Well, lesson learned. So, semifinals next time?
Round of 8.
Round of 8? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, Jared. Do you have any kind of final shout-outs, as well as one interesting fact about yourself that nobody else knows? And you can think about this during your shoutouts.
Okay. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at JonSnow2, and thanks to Psystorm Gaming, they gave me this sick hoodie this weekend, and I like hoodies. It's always way, way cold in the events, and you gotta have a hoodie. An interesting fact is, I guess my thumb is double jointed. I guess some people know. I like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good fact. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jared, and we'll see you guys next time.